Hey everybody, welcome back to the PetaPixel Podcast. It's the show where I get to look at my friends in little boxes and talk to them, and you can either listen to it or watch it right on YouTube. What a great concept, hey?
It's truly the future.
Oh man, that was my buddy Chris Nichols.
We never.
And that's Jaron.
We never have any idea what Jordan's going to say. So like when he just starts talking, Chris and I are like, "Oh God, where is he going with this time?"
Well, it
if
doesn't
I look
stop
exhausted,
there.
It's because I am. But I value you. Keep going.
Okay, great. So I like to kick every show off with a question. We're going to change things up a little bit. I only have a question for Chris Nichols this week.
Man.
Chris, my question is, if you could ask Jaron and I a question, what question would you ask?
What a stupid
I'm passing the baton.
What a cop-out.
Without any sort of warning?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Jeez, nothing.
I'm sure you're a curious man. There's got to be something that you've been always wondering.
I've known you for 15 years. I feel like I know pretty much everything about you, even stuff I don't want to know. So there's my question. Jordan, tell me something about yourself that I absolutely do not want to know. And Jaron, same question.
Ooh.
That you do not want to know.
Because I try to ask a lot of questions about people that I work with and people that I know and really try to understand a lot about them. So what do I not know about you that I don't want to know?
When I was learning piano, I don't know if you desperately don't want to know this. When I was learning piano, when I was like, a young teenager, maybe like, 13, maybe even younger than that, I had an upright Baldwin piano. And I remember sitting at it, and I was really frustrated with a particular piece that I was trying to learn. And I was like, I could not get they call it fingering. I know that sounds weird. I couldn't get the fingering correct to where I could actually move my hands fast enough.
Very few young men can.
And I remember just getting so frustrated, I banged my head and I hit the piano, but I didn't hit it with my head. I hit it with my two front teeth, and I left two dents in the wood of the piano, and I also chipped my tooth doing it. And so this front tooth here is actually like mostly like it's a large chunk of it that's not human tooth. It's like been fully replaced because I was frustrated with the piano.
That gives me a deep insight into your psyche and the internal struggle that is Jaron Schneider.
So mine, I know that you like really just value people who are like peak physical perfection, and that's why we've gotten along for quite a while. Yeah. So I haven't actually
always say that.
Told you any of my physical defects. So I'm just going to say it right on.
I know all your
here.
Physical defects.
Oh, do you? All
yes.
right. I have on my left foot two. Now they're not terribly, but when I was young, they were extremely webbed feet. They're actually connected. So now they split off about halfway up the toe, but when I was younger, they went like right up to the toenail. Wow. So I've never let you know that because I assumed you would just write off our friendship immediately.
Right, but now you've told the entire world.
Now that I've been put on the spot, I'm letting you know. So we'll see if our friendship. You might have. No, absolutely. I'm not putting feet on the internet. Oh, you mean off?
Not here.
Okay.
No. Okay. You can show me when we get together in a few weeks.
Right,
you can,
perfect.
So in truth, you actually have told me that before.
Oh, damn!
But he didn't tell me.
But that's okay.
I was digging deep there.
But that's cool because now Jaron knows, and now 20,000 people will know. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's why you love to swim so much. I get it now.
Yeah,
it's like you're a merman. I get it. That's cool.
Johnny Bravo episode once where he's like, "I'm sickened but curious." That's me. I want to know.
That's also why. Curious fact that you guys don't know: Waterworld is actually Jordan's favorite movie.
Yeah,
always has been since it came out. Yeah, he loves Waterworld. So
it's a weird movie to love,
there
Jordan.
You go. Makes sense.
Do they have that on the Criterion collection?
It's coming. I'm sure it's one of those things where people are like 30. Maybe that was a good movie. It's not, but everybody's just reappraising it because they watched it when they were 10. It's a tragedy. Chris, we haven't talked about this. You're the Costner aficionado. We haven't talked about your deep-seated Costner love, and Horizon comes out in theaters right away, so you could dish.
Do we have time to talk about this? I feel like people like to make up a lot of things about me, a lot of sort of lore and legends, and then it becomes and they're largely completely inaccurate. Like Jordan loves to talk about how I think Kevin Costner is like my dad that I always wanted to have, and that I idolize him. I mean, look, Dances with Wolves is still one of the greatest movies of all time. I'll fight anybody who disagrees with that. But, I don't, Yellowstone's fine. I like some of his. I don't love Kevin Costner.
I think it was pre-Yellowstone before, because he's like back in vogue now. There was a period where Costner was culty, and you were just like, Father, whenever he showed up on screen.
No, see, that's crazy. That's not the case.
The other one, I guess that's like that is you're very picky. You don't like most food.
Yeah. Yeah, and you say that all the time, and the fact is, I do like lots of foods, but you love to say that I only eat 10 things, and then you tell your wife, "Hey, Chris is coming over. He only eats 10 things, by the way." This is So you guys,
she baked a cake, and she's like, "Is he gonna like this? Does he like cake?" I'm like, "I don't know. He doesn't like a lot of things."
So yes,
this is great. What a voyage of discovery, fake and real we've gone on today.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what this show's great for. All right, so we got a great show for you. WWDC just happened. That's the Apple Worldwide Developer Conference. So we got Apple news and lots of it. As well, the Adobe saga continues. Every week we talk about how they've managed to piss photographers off. This week is no exception. There was a big hullabaloo over the last little while, and we're going to talk about Fuji's product line. We hinted at this a little while ago. It might be a little overwrought right now, so we're going to see what should stay and what should go in kind of a game there, and we're going to answer some technical questions. Don't read the comments. It's a whole PetaPixel podcast.
Thanks to our sponsor, OM System, for sponsoring the PetaPixel Podcast. Today, OM System is bringing you a deal that you simply cannot beat. For those who love the great outdoors and are passionate about photography, the weight and size of your camera gear can be a real game changer. Enter the OM System OM5. Not only does it boast cutting-edge tech and unmatched performance, but it also leaves ample space in your bag for all of your adventure essentials. With its impressive image quality and fast and accurate autofocus, the OM5 ensures you never miss a shot. Pair it with the M.Zuiko Digital ED 14-150 F4.0-5.6 II lens for the freedom to explore and capture the world. For a limited time, OM System is running an exclusive June promotion. Now through the 30th, when you purchase an OM5 camera and an M.Zuiko Digital ED 14-150, together you'll receive $550 in savings off the regular price. Adventure seekers and photography enthusiasts, listen up. You can now own this duo for just $1,300. This is an incredible deal considering the high-quality performance of this fully weather-sealed camera and lens combo. Before I finish this ad read, I do want to note, it seems, and it was before they were a podcast sponsor, I always noticed that OM and before Olympus, they were happy to do deals pretty much all the time. Like there's something running on special with them relatively frequently. And they are limited in their scope in terms of how long they do them, but they're usually pretty good. Yeah. This one is pretty good, right? $550 off a camera and lens. I'm down. I haven't used the 14-150. Do you? Are either of you guys familiar with that lens?
It's good. Yeah, it's a nice general purpose lens. I mean, that's one of the strengths of the Micro Four Thirds system is you can make nice lenses, big ranges, still very useful. Yeah.
What is that, 20?
Yeah, what's cool there, no one ever does a bundle with a travel zoom. That's really odd. I'm surprised Nikon didn't do 18-200s back in the day or something like that. It really has just been OM that's doing that bundle. So if you're going on a trip, it's a nice savings.
Yeah. I think that's a conversion of 28-300. That's crazy. That's a lot of. That's a gigantic amount of stuff you can shoot with that. So don't let this offer slip away. Head to your nearest authorized retailer or swing by explore.omsystem.com/petapixel to grab this fantastic deal before it's gone. But hurry, again, the offer ends June 30th, 2024.
Well, that's coming up soon.
That's coming up quick, yeah.
I know. I feel like it's only the first week of June, and I look, it's like June 11th. I'm like, oh my God. No. It's going to be July when I blink. So there you go. Thanks to OM System. What? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I'm just really happy how clean this ad read is compared to last week. You're doing a great job.
There were some comments on that.
Yeah, I have them at the end of the show. Thank you. I appreciate that everyone enjoyed watching me stumble through last week's. This week, my eyes and my mouth are working correctly. So anyway, thank you to System for sponsoring the PetaPixel podcast. We appreciate it. And we're going to move on to this giant block of news because it has been a busy week.
Yeah.
Let's start with some WWDC news. We're not going to talk a ton about what Apple announced. A lot of it is pretty technical, and if you're interested, you probably already know about it. But one thing I do want to note is that yesterday, within a 24-hour period, Canon dropped 2 dual-optic lenses for VR, AR, immersive content. One of them, so we knew about one ahead of time. Like we're under NDA on embargo. We knew that one was coming. Then we're watching WWDC and we see another one that looks not like the one we know about, and we're quite surprised. And that one is what's unusual about it is it's a 7.8 millimeter f4. But if you've seen any of Canon's previous dual optic lenses, they kind of like pop out and bulb out, more like kind of like goggly looking things.
Yeah.
This one looks as if they were perfectly mimicking the size and distance of a iPhone when turned sideways.
Yeah.
Like they're going for this right here. And this morning they announced that it is going to be the first Apple certified hardware and software combo solution that is made for Apple Vision Pro that is outside of Apple's ecosystem. So Canon is going to be Apple certified for VR, and they're the first to do so.
Right. I mean, Canon have a history of making 3D lenses. They have for quite a long time, actually. I mean, they were one of the only players when it was kind of a fad, which then died. So it's interesting they're doing this, and obviously Apple Vision Pro AR and VR applications are becoming really popular now. The implication, this hasn't been confirmed, but the implication is that this is going to be on an APS-C camera because they had it mounted to an R7.
Correct, and they confirmed that this morning. It is for APS-C.
Yeah. Okay, so APS-C.
Actually, both these lenses they announced. The other one being, I'm pulling it up right now, a 3.9 millimeter f3.5, and this one looks more like their other one. It's bigger and goggly. Both of these are for APS-C.
The success of this is all going to hinge on getting better resolution for these VR applications for the Apple Vision Pro. So that's the trick. We need to get to a certain amount of resolution. We're going to talk about this with some of our other stories. And so I don't know. I feel like it's interesting. Everybody's trying to get on board. They're trying to get started. They're trying to make products. That's what this whole push is going to need. But at the same time, I don't know if a Canon APS-C camera is going to give us the resolution that we require. Is it going to look better than an iPhone? Maybe, yeah. We'll have to see. But is it really getting us to that holy grail that we require to really make this work? Because people have been playing with, early testers have been playing with stuff. They've been seeing some of the results, trying out some of this, and largely the results have been disappointing because the resolution's not there.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, well, there's a few things. I really want to know what the perspective difference is because, you've got something mimicking the iPhone. It's not the width of the human eye, which is what that second lens is really designed to do. I want to know how much more dramatic the depth difference is going to be between those, which we haven't been able to test because we don't have Apple Vision Pros up here in Canada yet, which was one of the cool things that they touched on. So hopefully we'll get a chance to actually see what the difference is there. But the other really interesting thing is going APS-C, like you touched on, Chris, and they have it on the R7, which is like sub-sampled 4K. Like it's not a very detailed image on it, where at least with their previous one, it made a lot of sense. You could slap it on an R5 or an R5C and get at least 8K recording. That's quite a bit more detailed. So I'm hoping this is kind of tipping their hat a little bit to an upcoming APS-C camera that's a little more capable for video. I think that's definitely a possibility. The big thing is when I'm constantly on here like Canon, we need APS-C primes. This is not exactly what I had in mind. Thank you for answering the call. But
they gave you 2 primes in 24 hours, Jordan, and you're still not satisfied.
And I know. I'm so demanding. But yes, I'm looking forward to actually playing with this, experimenting with the bit. It's just tough because it all feels so abstract to me at this point, having not used a Vision Pro.
Is it possible that they're just kind of pushing these particular products more to 3D imagery, like just fun 3D photos, not making use of the entire VR space, but just be like, hey, look,
I think
you can capture some photos of your memories and it'll be 3D, and that's kind of cool. We're not trying to do necessarily.
It's hard to say because the press release was in Japanese, and when you translate from Japanese, video and images are used essentially interchangeably. They did say images, but they also say that their app, which is going to be called the EOS VR utility, converts the footage captured into spatial video. Right. So I'm not sure if that means they take a still image that then Canon considers video because it moves when you move, or if it shoots video at all. I'm not sure with the language there. But I will say this, Jordan, you were asking about like the field of view and how it's different between this and the two. So the one that they got announced at WWDC has an angle of view of about 60 degrees, while the one that's the 3.9 millimeter f3.5, the one that's more similar to the previous one that exists, that is 144 degree field of view.
Yeah. But also, just because of the difference of the two lenses, it's not just a matter of field of view that's going to be different, but also sense of perspective. Yeah. So I'm very curious to check that out for sure. But I do feel like if they were really leaning on this for photography, which they could absolutely do, like the R7 takes beautiful photographs, they didn't really push it in that direction at all in the keynote. So that makes me think, again, it's just video. That's the way that they're leaning.
Yeah.
Apple did note that their Vision Pro Photos app will have the ability to take a 2D standard two-dimensional image and use machine learning to turn it spatial. They did say that. So that is something. Yeah. So they are looking at making photos more immersive. But yeah, it was a little convoluted, the language there. There was one more thing I wanted to mention about these. So Apple clearly has a lot of emphasis on making content for Vision Pro. They didn't say it out loud, but they were really talking quite a bit about getting as much on there as possible. They mentioned that you can take immersive video and photos with the iPhone, which is true. That's been true since they announced the Vision Pro. But they also had this from Canon. And then on the absolute highest possible end, Blackmagic did what Canon said was required. And then they went even further beyond that. So to set this up a little bit, we talked to Canon in Japan earlier this year and asked them about the Vision Pro. And they said that they didn't have anything that could actually take advantage of the pixel density of those little screens inside. And they said, what companies will be providing images for the Vision Pro will be required to have 100 megapixels at 60 frames per second. Blackmagic's like, cool, hold my beer.
It's such a Blackmagic move. It really is.
So now they have created, it's in development, should be out this year, called the Ursa Cine Immersive. And it shoots a resolution of 8,160 by 7,200 pixels at 90 frames per second for each eye.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
That's greater than 8K and faster than 60p. So Blackmagic has done more than what Canon said was the minimum. And this thing looks absurd.
And if you don't film your children's soccer games with this, you're a bad parent.
I know. I mean, this is cool. I mean, at least Blackmagic is showing that the resolution can be achieved. I mean, again, we haven't seen the product yet, but if they can do it, that's going to be what we need to do. I'm assuming the focal length is going to be fixed. Right?
It doesn't look like you can change it. No.
And so I don't know. Obviously, we don't know how much Apple is sort of like co-opting and co-supporting these projects and stuff, because they obviously have a vested interest to get content out for the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it kind of falls flat. And I don't know. I see this news and I'm not trying to be a downer. We've seen this whole immersive photography thing for decades now, right? 3D TVs, sitting in your living room wearing goggles where you don't care how silly you look. Everybody's like, this is stupid. I'm not going to do it. 3-dimensional photography has always just been a very niche, fun thing, right? Like it's never taken off. It's never really become 3D movies in the theater, right? Like that trend's gone. It's just like,
is it? I think Avatar's still released in 3D.
Come on. Yeah. But how many people are still doing it, right? Like it's not like this big thing. It's a fad. And so I get it. I get the appeal of this. I get the potential of it. Being able to see the world in a very 3-dimensional way. I get it. But I just feel like, I don't know. I'm skeptical, I guess, on how successful this venture is going to be and how popular it really is going to be. I mean,
I feel like you need to see content made for Vision Pro,
yeah,
on a Vision Pro, to really decide if it's worth it
at a proper resolution. Yeah.
So I will say that I also have not worn one, but one of our team members did, and he went in there pretty skeptical and left very convinced. Mm-hmm. So like the experience is that I am hearing that
quite a bit.
And yeah, so for someone who's never used it, you can dust it off as being just like all the other crappy visual enhancing thingies that we've gotten over the years. And until you do.
But I mean, I've seen some 3D movies in the theater where I was like, oh, that was a cool experience. And it was shot in a way that really did show that. And that was fun. And now I'm like, yeah, but I don't want all my movies in 3D now. Like, I'm happy to watch movies shot for a two-dimensional plane, and I want them to stay that way.
Specifically.
Yeah.
Which?
Dances with Wolves, yeah. And Waterworld.
Yeah. Waterworld 3D. Like, yeah, no. Anyway, we'll see what happens. I want to put one on my head, and I want to turn it on, and I want to be blown away. But the best thing I've seen so far is somebody showing a clip where they were going to the bathroom on the toilet, and they were on a mountaintop on their VR headset with the wind blowing. And I'm like, that's great. That's cool. Otherwise, I just don't get it. I don't.
Of course, the thing that Chris likes is the toilet humor.
Yeah.
No, but it's, that was fascinating. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, you're not in some bathroom, you're on top of a mountain pooping. That's great. Wonderful.
I think we just put a pin on it essentially until we can actually try it out.
Yeah.
That's really where I'm at. And now that's actually going to be a possibility soon.
But this is all good news. And the Blackmagic, if it can really push that and record for longer than, 10 minutes and not catch on fire, this is going to be great.
The 12K is out there. So they're definitely running high resolution cameras without overheat limitations.
Apparently they have another camera that shoots 17K already. And this is probably
the one on
that,
the way.
but likely tweaked.
Yeah.
So, okay. We'll revisit that someday, maybe. The last thing I want to talk about with Adobe is, not Adobe, that's next. Apple is yesterday's entire WWDC was AI, which everyone
but expected. Not artificial intelligence, Jaron. They were very clear.
Apple intelligence. We're going to talk about one thing, and that's the generative AI tools that are being added that look an awful lot like the ones we're seeing on Android. Right, Chris?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, this is one of the cases where Google and Samsung in particular, some of the other Android companies, really kind of led the way with generative fill and being able to move subjects and cloud-based AI on your phone. And so it makes sense that Apple's never been a company that's like, oh, we have to be first. They always like to come out and be like, okay, but we're going to do it like the best, and so that's arguable, but we'll have to wait and see. But the bar's pretty low, right? I mean, I'm not giving Google and Samsung a hard time. I mean, yes, you have to jump onto this bandwagon and start working on it. And this is early days, but the results from both Google and Samsung looked, first off, very similar to each other, and second, pretty poor in a lot of cases. Like, and even Apple's main photo that they're showing, where you're just taking somebody out of the background, that's relatively easy to do, right? Mm-hmm. For AI. It's really, if I want to move somebody to a different location or separate people that are touching or whatever, like that's where it really starts to fall apart, where the AI has a hard time with shadows, reconstructing shadows, leaving somebody's hand connected to someone else's hand, but their wrist is cut off, stuff like that. And it's not seamless by any stretch. It's really quite obvious. So even on Instagram. So again, it makes sense. Apple's got to jump on board. They certainly don't want to just watch other companies do it. And the AI, Apple intelligence, wow. I mean, that's very Apple. So I'm eager to play with it and see. It makes sense. Is it going to be cloud-based? Do we know if it's going to be cloud-based only or on the phone?
No.
Internally?
So that is, okay. You've asked.
Really interesting.
Now I've got to say, no. Apple made a large stand that they are doing most of the calculations for AI on device, locked to the device, encrypted, and private. It will, if you ask it something, it will be like, I need help. Do you want me to ask for more help? And you have to tell it, you may go to the cloud and ask this. And then Apple also describes a way that it only sends the data it couldn't do on device to be calculated into the cloud, and then pulls it back down. And then they also say that none of the stuff that you send there will ever be used for training. So they're essentially, they're not doing the training. They're buying from a company who is doing the training, which is OpenAI.
Yeah.
So at least on Apple is able to be like, we're not doing that. We're not invading your privacy. Only the company that they're purchasing the software from is.
I feel like the whole gap to announce these features is really just they were trying to figure out the marketing side of it. How do we talk about AI without scaring people? Like, I think it's really interesting that all of their new things where it is actually generating something completely, it's not photorealistic, because that's what makes people upset and really bothers them. It's like, hey, we can make like a little cartoon of an idea that you want to convey, or something that looks like kind of goofy CG or something like that, but nothing photorealistic on the device. And again, just they brought up training way more than I was expecting them to. Like, that they are not using any of your stuff to train the AI repeatedly. So I do think they really went into it with how can we announce these features without scaring people? And I don't know, online, I feel like the response is they almost did a good job. Is that what you're feeling, Jaron?
I think the way I looked at it was they saw what Microsoft did and how they've been discussing AI and how OpenAI discusses AI. And they're like, that's very icky. We're going to avoid being icky at whatever possible way we can.
Yeah.
And I think they succeeded in that, at least saying it, whether or not it's true. I'm not saying I believe anything anyone's saying about this, but I am saying that Apple was clearly the most transparent and seeming to understand how real humans look at this, and with concern.
Yeah. People are scared, right?
Yeah. And they seem to get it.
You have to read the room too. Right? I mean, like media stories are pushing it. There's this growing sort of sense that, oh yeah. And of course, one of our major news topics that we're going to talk about today, it's people are scared or concerned or worried. And so that makes a lot of sense. Especially when you talk about smartphone photos, and you're like, well, I don't want my family pictures spread all over the place. And I don't want to see like, family member faces show up on ads and stuff like that. So yeah, it makes sense. So I could see why Apple would be very aggressive with that. But will the results be different? I'm suspecting they're going to have results that'll be pretty similar to what we've seen from Google and Samsung, but we'll see.
I think it's kind of a hilarious thing that they're saying, like, look, we're not doing anything unethical like those other companies out there. We're just using the information from the other companies that have acquired stuff unethically.
Yeah.
Like the OpenAI stuff, we know basically it's being trained on YouTube. So in a way, Apple is going to be getting information. It's just not stuff that's being done specifically on your device or uploaded directly to iCloud or something like that. But yeah, I did find that kind of a hilarious, little moral walkthrough they were doing there. Tippy toeing.
Well, that's a decent.
It depends. And I should say, like the Google, Samsung, and I'm assuming Apple, like generative fill, just erasing things actually does work really well. That's not an issue I have. It's really when you want to do the more advanced stuff where it becomes a problem. So cutting something out in the background in a clean background is actually quite easy.
I think you'll notice Apple didn't advertise the ability to do the things that don't look good, while Samsung and Google put those front and center.
I was at a restaurant the other day and I saw separate ads for Samsung and Google showing their like AI moving a person around seamlessly. So they're pushing that hard.
I mean, once the results are effective, maybe people won't care that someone's stealing your stuff. Like, maybe they'll just be like, but look, the results are so amazing. I mean, look at this shot. So I don't know. We'll see. We're in this battle right now, which really does go into our next topic.
Yeah. So that is a decent segue to this, what I'm calling the Adobe Block. And this is Adobe, once again, finding new ways to piss off artists. So we'll go from start to finish here. I'll do the whole saga for you, and you guys can provide your input on it. So on June 5th, 6th, a notification started popping up for some people when they opened Adobe programs. And in this, that notification had this they're updating their terms of use. And it said this thing: Adobe clarified that we may access your content through both automated and manual methods, such as for content review, which meant to many people that anything you put into an Adobe program, Adobe could see and use. This kind of touches on a different term of use thing that we've talked about in previous years, where Adobe, there was an AI related thing that sounded like they could look at Lightroom and train their AI on whatever was in your library. That wasn't true, but that was what the language sounded like. And it's very similar to what happened here. This went mega viral. This was all over all social media. It was one of the top stories on Reddit. That forced Adobe to start trying to put this fire out. And they wrote a blog. Scott Belsky at Adobe wrote a blog that responded to this terms of use situation and said that they kind of missed the mark with the legalese and said that Adobe isn't going to spy on you. And then yesterday, they came back again with another blog post, this one written by their head of legal, which is probably the person who approved the language to begin with. They will be revising the terms of use to clarify what they mean by, quote, content licensing, AI, and privacy, and admit that this was a problem. We also spoke with Adobe's head of PR at Adobe, who told us that they were learning from this, that they should have changed something about this. And for us, it's like, you're a multi-billion-dollar company that artists have been using regularly for 2 decades. You can't say you're learning now.
Plus, you already had a scare months ago where people were upset about it. So
before you guys give your input, here's what I have to say about this. As someone who's been working with Adobe for the entire time that I have been in media as a journalist, I will say that I think that Adobe has fallen victim to turnover and mass change. They moved away from their PR group a couple of years ago that had been with them for a long time. Then and that was probably caused because all of the people that used to be at Adobe working on these projects moved on, are on different companies in different departments or whatever, no longer overseeing that part of the business. So you have a new PR group, several new PR groups. It's now split among several as opposed to just one, and all new people managing them. I think that the way that this was phrased feels a lot like how someone, if they came over from SAP or HP or Salesforce, comes over and starts working for Adobe. This is just, how they do things. They just toss the language out there and, enterprise customers don't care.
And you hope most people just click.
Yeah.
Right?
And
just
most
click.
people that are in those types of high level non-creative functions do. They just agree and move on. But that's not how this is. And there's now a vast disconnect between the people that are running the company and the customers. And it's multi-tiered disconnect. And they seem confused and not prepared to hear that there's pushback from artists. That's what I think is happening. I don't know if it's true, but I can tell you that none of the people that I used to work with are there anymore.
Well, I mean, and the Apple thing was interesting too, right? I mean, obviously some companies are starting to realize like we got to read the room. We gotta be careful how we express these things because there's a lot of ignorance for sure. There's a lot of miscommunication. There's a lot of misinformation. A lot of it is just the companies willfully not really stating what's going on, and then you have to do releases afterwards and blog posts afterwards and stuff. It would make sense to really try to get on top of this before it's an issue, but that doesn't seem to be how people want to do stuff. So. I guess we should clarify some of the situations, right? I mean, the main concern absolutely is going to be if you're working on photography or projects that are under NDA, which we do all the time, right? Yeah. The vast majority of our images and video are shot on NDA products. The concern is, we can't have stuff pulling those images, looking at them, referencing them, whatever, using them. I mean, that could be really problematic. Absolutely. And that was part of the big thing with Adobe's. They're saying, well, look, that's not really what's going to happen. That's not really our concern. We're not trying to learn off of those images. Adobe is definitely taking a stance of it's more to, first of all, protect against any sort of illegal photography. We're talking about stuff that has sexual content that's not appropriate or illegal acts that aren't appropriate. And so a lot of it's like that. We need to be able to look at that and check it. There has been longstanding information as well that if you are going to share images, there has to be some sort of sub-licensing to be able to do that legally, if it's going to be shared through other software programs and stuff. And everybody's trying to integrate now with all these different programs. So, and that all makes sense, that stuff all does make sense. That could have been clarified more so right off the bat. As far as imagery goes and being able to use it and learn from it, I believe, as I understand it in the articles, that they're only saying stuff that's being sent to the cloud. That's kind of now, I don't know if that's the case. Like anything that you have on your computer, they can't look at that. They're not going to touch that. It's only stuff that goes to the cloud. And again, they're saying we're not doing it to learn from. They've kind of stated that it's not for learning purposes. At the same time, Adobe stock imagery, they do in the end user licensing agreement say, yeah, we can pretty much use your photos and imagery there for learning. It's very scary and it's very confusing. You're like, am I part of that now? The legalese is always written in such a way where the lawyers will easily phase into it.
Yeah, the lawyers will always put the harshest, most advanced language they can to protect themselves fully from anything that could possibly be conceived of in the future. That's what happened here, and that was what was the dumb thing, is that they did that, which is what they would do for any enterprise software, any hardware, anything that does that. This is the same language, but they didn't think that wouldn't apply to this particular instance, Jordan.
Well, and we call it the Adobe Block because this has been happening for months and months and months and months, just consistently. Like, I think what a lot of people need to understand is when they say that they're like looking at it, they're looking at your workflow. Like, they're trying to figure out ways to automate how you're using those Adobe tools. That's the direction that they're kind of moving in. But yeah, just based on, here's my theory, and it's very similar to yours, Jaron, is they have a 5-year plan for moving, so much of this stuff to, business owners, things like that. Like creatives, I think, is an audience and a user base that they're trying to move away from eventually. But right now, that's still their main client. And they're just pissing those people off while, saying like, skip the photo shoot. You don't need to do that or anything. Because eventually long term, they do want it to be, you just fire up Adobe and type in, smiling people do shampoo commercial. And
it just comes out perfect.
Exactly. And that's kind of the end goal, where you can bypass those creatives. But at the time being, they're the people who are still paying for your software. It just seems like, just again, not reading the room, just a bunch of corporate people not actually talking to their client base because they got too big. I think that's the problem.
Yep, they got way too big. All of the people that were there back when they were actually connected to the audience that they're serving are now moved on or are no longer allowed to speak. They get siloed. This is it's a multi-billion-dollar company. The only person that has been consistent through this whole time, and he has been consistently terrible to speak to, is Adobe's CEO. Yeah. And he's the same, and he's always been hyper-focused on company value. He's done a great job there. But he is not the shining example of how to talk to your customer base. There's multiple examples of him being not a good person to speak to when it comes to relating to a real human being. And it seems like that company culture by him is now drifting downward, and the only people that really feel and care are the ones that aren't talking to media and other photographers. They're the ones that are developing the software or whatever, and it stinks to see. I would like Adobe to return to the way they used to be, which is actually talking with, interfacing with us. I mean, I went to an event at NAB hosted by Adobe. It was like a cocktail hour. I went in there and didn't see a single soul I recognized. Could not tell who worked for Adobe and who didn't. I hung out for about half an hour and left, and that's really very different than how it used to be when those same people were there every year. They were the same ones that I talked to online, the same people that I interfaced with, had a ton of FaceTime with, and it's becoming obvious that there are downsides to shifting to what they've done.
Well, they're saying we need you right now, but our long-term goal is to have you unemployed.
Yeah, and
which
that
isn't
doesn't
like a great marketing message.
No, that doesn't jive with us at all. No.
But so the other challenge, though, is then every photographer has to look at it, or creative. I mean, but you got to look at it and be like, the software I think is still very good. Like I rely on it. It's part of my workflow. I like it. I happen to use it a lot. I depend on it, frankly. And so it's like every creative now has to look at it, every illustrator, every graphic designer, photographer, and say, well, okay, where's that threshold now? Do I keep using the software, but just make sure I protect myself as much as possible? For example, by not using the cloud. I don't use the cloud. I just do everything locally on my system. But that's more because I'm an old man than anything else. It's not because I'm trying to
and all the illegal stuff, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and all the illegal stuff that I shoot,
drive,
exactly, which I don't want out there because it'd be very embarrassing. So then it's also, it all, but at the same time, like, is that what you do? Do you use the software, but in a way where you're still protected until you can't anymore? Because it very well could reach a climax where it's over the edge. And now it's like, yeah, if you keep using their software, you're a major part of the problem. Do you take a stance now? There's not that much for open source alternatives that are really that effective, right? I mean, that's kind of the problem.
People point to a few of them that are like, you could use these instead, and they are jank. They are not easy to use. They don't have the same nearly as good results. And essentially the only reason you'd use them is because you're making you're putting your foot down.
Stand.
Yeah, taking a stand.
And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that, but yeah, there aren't a lot of alternatives, right? I mean, like Capture One, of course, but we've already talked about them a few weeks ago, where it's like that market's changing, and that
some folks say you can still buy the perpetual, which you can, but they don't mention the part where you're not getting any updates. I don't even think they're updating adding new camera support. You're not even getting
camera support.
Yeah, there's no reason to purchase that. Yeah,
so that sucks. Plus, the price went up crazy, right? Like it's like. So
they're not
tough.
a real viable alternative if your idea is to save money and not give it to a company that doesn't have your best interests in mind in the future. Keep in mind that they're owned by private equity. They only have their own interests in mind for the future.
Yeah. So
I happened to Red Lobster.
I feel as a creative.
Don't get me started about the
private
Red
equity
Lobster debacle.
I feel like I'm personally in a position where I still have to tough it out for a while and really just kind of keep abreast of the situation. But this
is the same angle I take with Canon, where people say I seem to hate Canon when I have to remind them regularly that I've shot Canon for 20 years. I feel the same way about Adobe. I know that they can be good, and I know that they can do better. And I'm hard on them because I want them to be better, be that business that they were, or that the heights that I've seen them reach. I also use Adobe. And I like Adobe's software, and it upsets me to see them continually screw up publicly when it is so easy to not screw up. And that's why I keep bringing this up. And I want, if anyone from Adobe is listening, because I know you are, because I know you read our stories, I want you to be better. That's it. I'm not trying to take you down. I want you to be good. And
so we'll see.
Yeah, I can say on, like, we're talking specifically about Lightroom, and that is a real issue. Like, I love Capture One. That's been my primary editing thing. But just the delays in support for new cameras means just the other day was like, I'm just going to suck it up and get the photographer's plan for Adobe for that. But I have found alternatives for like video editing. I'm not going to use Premiere. I'm not throwing money at Adobe for there, because there are excellent alternatives for that. Or, I know that there's some good InDesign alternatives. I saw some comments people were saying. So if there is Adobe software that has a compelling alternative, which is not really the case in like raw processing right now, maybe take a look at it, because that's the only way. I mean, you talk about Adobe being owned by private equity. People unsubscribing is the only thing that's going to have any impact whatsoever. Getting mad on social media doesn't mean a thing.
But, it has to be appreciated that, especially in our business, our particular job, Jordan, like, we're tied to Lightroom and Photoshop in a huge way, because we're always testing brand new cameras. And as you mentioned, that time frame to get raw support is very important in our business, so that we can evaluate cameras when they come out. So yeah, it's tough.
All right. Before we get to our main story, which I guess it's main story part 2, because that was a main story. We're in another main story. Yeah. I do want to remind everyone to make sure to get ready for Monday morning, this coming Monday, because the Z6 III will be announced, and Chris Nichols and Jordan Drake have thoughts because they've used it.
Yep.
That's all they're allowed to say.
We can't talk about it right now.
There.
Soon.
Yeah, I haven't seen the video. I'm assuming it's good. Jordan's been talking it up for a while. I'm looking forward to checking it out myself. So, that's it. Anything to add? No?
Yeah, I was going to say my favorite thing about it is, and then you could just put a sensor bleep and some color bars up, Jaron, but I'm not going to give you extra work. So I'm not even going to do that joke. Yeah, sorry.
I can tell you, it's a camera, and it's made by Nikon.
Stop it!
You put Nikon lenses on it, and it takes photos. And,
is it the third in a series of cameras from the same name?
Yeah, I don't know. Sure.
Z6 III?
Yeah.
My favorite feature on it was the badge that said Z6 and then Roman numeral 3 right after it. That was
my favorite
cool.
feature that I can talk about is it's got a grip.
You can talk about that? I don't think you can.
Oh, shit.
Got to censor you. All right.
Censor. Cut that part out.
At any rate, look forward to that. But we're going to move on and talk about Fujifilm, because a few weeks ago, I was scrolling through Fujifilm's camera offerings on their website, And well, there was a lot there. So we're going to go over what it is. But first, this main story segment is brought to you by the PetaPixel Store.
What?
Yeah.
Tell me more, Darren.
It's launching.
We have store.petapixel.com. Link below the like button if you want to go check it out. We have our first set of merch drops that Jordan's going to show another shirt, and Chris is wearing one, and I'm wearing one. And
you guys saw the Loca shirt last time. Look, it comes in white or black.
There you go. He hasn't even taken it out of that bag yet, which is great. They're going to probably be wearing these on and off for a while now. And the way this is going to work is we're going to have some options on the store for a certain amount of time, and then those options will disappear, and we're going to replace them with some other ones. That doesn't mean they're going to disappear forever, but I can't tell you when they're going to come back. So that's how it goes.
Jump on it.
Check them out now. Let us know what you think. If you have other ideas for shirts that you are interested in, put them in the comments below. I'll take a look at those. Yeah. And then if I see a few of them that seem particularly compelling, maybe I'll throw a poll over on our community tab. Feedback. And whatever you guys decide, we'll make it into a shirt. So you let us know.
My goal is just to get all of the repetitive technical jargon on T-shirts for the videos, so I don't have to repeat myself every time. I'm just going to point to this. It's going to be great. Jordan can do a close-up.
Should we do that for disclosures as well? Like blank, and then you have to write it in with a Sharpie, has flown us out to this location and put us up in a hotel.
Or just put all the brands on the shirt. I'll just cover up the ones...
the one that it was. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Again, not useful at all for our audience to purchase that particular model, but it would be cute for us.
We did have a few in there that were specifically requested by these guys that didn't make the cut because they were too specific to their exact needs as far as not wanting to say things on camera. We went with stuff that you guys might actually want to wear. So go check those out.
The local one's adorable. I
like the local one. Store.petapixel.com. Again, link in the description below. Let us know your thoughts. Appreciate it. And all of that goes to help keeping these guys continuing to do what they do, which is make videos you guys like to watch.
I do like I hate 35mm lenses. We'll see. We'll come up with something. I don't know. We'll see.
Let us know. And take pictures of yourselves with our swag and tag us. That would be awesome.
That'd be great.
Nice thing to see.
Yes, on Threads and on Instagram and whatever. All right, so we're going to go through all of these. So what I want you guys to do is we're going to look at all of their GFX and X series cameras, and I want you to tell me what's missing, and then what are the best options for beginners, intermediate, enthusiasts, and professionals, and what do you think could even be phased out at this point?
That's what I want to do. Which ones do we kill?
So this is not nearly as overwhelming as Sony's camera offerings. I will say that Fujifilm's US website has some on there that are they still have links to public pages where it's like, this is a cool camera that you could get, and then you go and try and get it and it doesn't exist anymore.
There's no way. Yeah.
So for GFX, there's only 4 cameras: the GFX 100 II, the GFX 100S II, the GFX 100S, and the GFX 50S II. The 100, the 50S, and the 50R are technically still on their website, but you can't buy them.
No, don't. No. Especially, I know Chris has strong thoughts about the R in particular. He was working in the car the other day. I wish it was 3, because then we could just do like F, Marry, Kill with all of these, but sadly.
Yeah.
Well, do any of these...
Jordan would F every single one of them.
That is incorrect. There is one that I don't think people should invest in that list. Which one is it?
Which one is it, Chris? Which one do you think he doesn't like?
Jordan doesn't want people to invest in the 50S too.
Correct.
Yes, and that's because, and you know what? I don't. How do I say this? I do agree with Jordan, but I don't agree with Jordan.
No, that's the same as every statement I've ever made.
Yeah, that's probably true. So, I mean, the real thing, and I think this is where Jordan's coming from, is the 100 megapixel sensor is just so good. And when you're buying a medium format camera, the thought process is that's one of the main strengths of the medium format system, getting that high resolution. It's an excellent sensor with very few compromises to have that high resolution, other than maybe the scan rates. But it's it kind of makes you think, well, if you're already spending the money, why not go all the way and get a 100 megapixel sensor? At the same time, the 50 does represent better value. And so the other part of me is like, well, not everybody has the dough to throw down and get the 100 megapixel camera. And honestly, although I love the 100 megapixel resolution, there aren't that many situations where I absolutely need it. If you do need it, you know who you are. And so I feel like if somebody wants to have the look and the feel and the experience of using a GFX, the 50S2 does save you some money. It's a fantastic camera. So I could say maybe beginners might want to get in there. Enthusiasts might want to get in there. It has the better autofocusing. It's a nice compact body. I love the body design. I enjoyed using it recently. And so 50 megapixels is plenty for most people. But yes, it would really be more because you want to use the system, because then of course you can think, well, why not get a full frame 60 megapixel or 45 megapixel camera? I know, exactly. And that is absolutely a very reasonable way to think. I mean,
the 50S2 is cheaper, but it's still $3,000.
Yes.
Yeah. And that sensor is old. Like we reviewed the 645Z, I think 8 years ago, something like that, when we were blown away by that sensor. Like, you know, you mentioned like scan rates, Chris. Like the 50 is still an incredibly slow camera. Like I really think if you're looking at medium format, you're doing it because you want the combination of tons of dynamic range and tons of detail. And I just feel like the 50 is not as compelling an option when you could go grab, you know, a full frame camera with a base ISO of 64 that gives you similar DR, or, you know, a Sony with the 60 megapixel chip that gives you a more detailed image. So that's why that one's out. The other three cameras, fantastic.
You know, it's not always about min-maxing, you know, D&D style, Jordan. So, you know, sometimes you just... Anyways, at least the 100S is on there. I think the 100S should stay because that does give you the most affordable price point to get into that 100 megapixel sensor. And for what a lot of people are doing with the medium format, where you're shooting things like studio, landscape, it's a great body design. I love the smaller body. We both prefer the S models. The 100S does get you that lower price, getting great image quality. What you're giving up is the autofocusing algorithms primarily of the new bodies. They do focus more accurately. They do focus quickly. I mean, we were even shooting that new 500 millimeter lens, and it was doing a pretty decent job capturing animals, wildlife. So if you want to get on the push of having the more versatile systems, that's where the second version models make sense. But I do still think the 100S has a place on there. Not everybody needs the latest algorithms. So
no, and so many people in that class of camera are going to be focus recompose people anyways. So grab an S and you'll be absolutely thrilled with the results.
Yeah. And then for me, my star on that list is the 100S2, even over the 100 II. Not only do I prefer the body, it's, you know, they didn't really leave a lot out on the body design, even though it's more of a compact body design. It's still rugged. It's got nice controls, and the EVF is better. And I think that's a huge benefit.
Yeah. I love that camera.
Yeah.
So of these, are any something that you would recommend for a beginner?
If you can afford... the 100S or the 52 would be my choice, the 50S2. And so it really comes down to, do you need that resolution? If you're Jordan, you absolutely do. You know, those are good options if you don't need the focusing. But I still think the 50S2 has a place, absolutely. And the 50R can burn. And
well, it's not around anymore, so don't worry about it. What about...
The used market's actually pretty healthy. Those older GFX bodies have come down in price in a big way. I'm
curious. I'm going to KEH right now. How much is a 50R?
Well, don't get the 50R. Even if somebody's giving it to you for $50, say no, thank you. I don't hate myself that much.
$22.95. You can get a 50R. Chris says don't do it. Okay, are any of these good for intermediate? Which is different from enthusiast and pro. So the where I say enthusiast is a high level shooter, someone with a lot of knowledge, but doesn't shoot as their main source of income. That's an enthusiast. A professional is that same person, but is shooting as their main source of income. Intermediate is below an enthusiast.
I feel like the GFX system doesn't really fit into the sort of beginner, intermediate, enthusiast, advanced photographer thing. I think it's really like, how do I say it? I mean, if you're getting into these cameras, a big push should be for commercial work, right? In a lot of cases, or high-end work in a lot of cases. But that being said, I do know that a lot of enthusiasts also like to get these cameras just for the joy of having a medium format. I mean, Fujifilm right now are killing it in the medium format market. It makes a lot of sense. So they're the most practical medium format cameras around. I don't know. Enthusiasts, everybody should just get the 100S too.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like in that current lineup right now, you can get a good deal on the S if you're not going to take advantage of that autofocus, but it's very few people. And I don't think it's a level of like, oh, pro versus enthusiast that should go to the 100 too. I think it's just like, do you want that better EVF? Because the other major upgrades, the video capabilities and the slightly faster burst rate with reduced bit depth, I don't think that's very useful for most people. So 100S2 should be the only camera in the GFX lineup. There, I said it.
I think the 100 though, does have better battery life. It does have like a more rugged body design. Well, battery life is pretty similar. Yeah, it has a rugged body design. It's got the faster burst rates. I think there's some market for that. Some people are going to dig that. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. But the 100S2 is like the practical.
That's the Goldilocks in that lineup.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to the X series, of which there are 8 cameras.
Lots.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 cameras that are currently in production that you can buy right now. The ones that Fujifilm's website still shows but are not available are the X Pro 3, the XS10, the XE4, the XT200, and the XT4. Those are gone. So if you were thinking of recommending those, they are difficult to acquire. You have to go to keh.com to get those. But let's talk about what is available. So these are in the order from top to bottom that Fujifilm's website shows. The XH2S,
keep.
The XH2,
keep.
The XT5,
keep.
The XS20,
keep.
XT50, that's brand new.
Keep.
XT32,
kill.
No, that's ridiculous.
And then the X100-6 and X100-5. Those are both
X100-5 is not. No, there's
yes,
no
it is.
way.
It's in production.
I don't care if it's on their... No.
Here's the thing. I would have excluded it, except B&H says it is temporarily on back order, not discontinued. So it is
I'd want a 6 anyways.
Yeah, I don't think there's a reason to buy the 5.
No.
When
the 5's the only one on there I would kill.
The 6 is a much more capable camera, but
you would kill the 5 off here.
Yes,
I'd kill the 5. Yeah,
I think you will be waiting for a long time if not getting
and why would you want it? The 6 is basically
because some people say IBIS isn't necessary. And those people are wrong.
Great. So I think Fujifilm's done a good job of keeping the cameras that should be on here. It is a lot of cameras, but that's the same as everybody else. But they all actually have very different roles. There's not a lot of crossover here. I personally don't really gravitate to the XH2 bodies. I never really have, but I know Jordan likes them for video work. At least
isn't that their main? I guess the main purpose of it was to be like for video. Is that right?
Yeah, video and action. Yeah, the stacked sensor
video
and everything,
action, faster scanning, quick bursts. Yeah, it's a bigger, bulkier body, and so they never appealed to me. They're great cameras. I just, they're more expensive. I would prefer something more like the XT5, which is, of course, a very svelte body, great for photography, gives you a lot of that
popular too.
Vintage kind of feel, right? They're fantastic cameras. XS20, I think, is still one of the best value cameras from the Fujifilm line, especially if you don't need the 40 megapixel sensor. And it's a great all-round camera. It's a pretty decent price. You just don't get the vintage shooting experience, but I actually really like the way the XS20 handles. You get the IBIS. The XT50 is what really kind of threw a wrench in the works because it is more expensive. But it has the IBIS, so it's almost like an alternative to the XS20 if you want that vintage styling. I don't think we should kill the XT32. It's a great little camera, and it does give us a lower price point. Not everybody is going to want an XS body to get the lower price point. So because the XT50 is expensive. It really is. So I think it makes sense to have an XT30 version 2 that gets you the lower price point to get into the entry.
So the reason I went kill with that is I missed that the XS10 has been discontinued because that is a much more capable camera that was sitting at the same price, which is why I always thought that XT30 series should have been off the line. But yeah, if the 10 is gone, that does make things a little bit more difficult.
So revive. But
maybe
I'm just.
Back. But bring it. Do it.
Get one used.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is, you guys, other than having 2 X100s on here, are pretty happy with Fujifilm's line. They offer something for everyone. So tell me, what is the best camera here for beginners?
So it's going to be the XT50/30, right? I mean, to me, the real difference when we start getting into the higher end cameras, it used to be IBIS. That's not the case anymore. But really the difference is rugged bodies, right? When you go above the XT series, like the XT30, the XT50, now you're getting into more rugged bodies, weather sealing, nicer body design, metal in a lot of cases, heavier. So that's one thing. More capable burst rates, faster shooting. That's obviously the other thing that really sets them apart. So if you're like an enthusiast or an intermediate photographer and you don't need fast shooting capabilities, you're still getting good focus on both these bodies. So if you don't need faster shooting, I think the 50 and the 30 make a lot of sense. And the 50 is a really classy camera. It's pricey, I get it, but for what you get, the IBIS, the faster focusing, really nice body design. I liked it. I actually liked it more than I thought I would.
Here's a fun mind game for us. What do you think is easier for a beginner? A body like the XT50 and 30 with the clearly labeled dials with a specific purpose, or something like the XS20 where people can kind of tailor it a little bit more to their shooting style?
I don't know. I find them. I can't really talk about that because I find them both easy to use. But obviously, I've used them both.
I think the XS20 is going to be more akin to what I think a beginner might be expecting a camera to look like.
I would say if you've already used other mirrorless cameras or even DSLRs, there's some familiarity going to the XS20. But at the same time, Fuji's done a great job of making their retro cameras very easy to understand and use. And it's not like it's a big learning curve to kind of go back to classic dials. And then, in fact, once you do that, people tend to prefer it because it really is very simple. It's easy to understand. You have all your mode controls basically.
So you've got 3 cameras on here that you would put in, but at the beginner, maybe all the way up to intermediate, the S20, the T50, and the T32.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised to hear that you don't think the X100VI is a beginner camera.
I don't think it is, really. I don't think it's versatile enough. I think people might get a little frustrated when they're learning photography with the limitations of that. It's like, I would almost never say the X100VI should be your primary camera. I think you've got another, whether it's Fuji or whatever, you've got another camera system, and that is your go out, be creative, have fun. The Jaren camera, like the situation why Jaren lusts after this camera is that kind of shooting experience.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a primary one, so I don't think it makes sense for beginners.
All right. What is the best camera on here for an enthusiast or a pro?
Oh.
I mean, I'm going to swing XH2S. I think that's their most well-rounded camera, but it is not the highest resolution, but that stacked sensor does bring real advantages, and it's their best focusing body, which I think is really important for pro.
They're giving you a lot of choices on what I guess you have to really value what's more important to you, right?
Yeah.
So the XH2S is their hybrid de facto. Like, that's a great camera. For photographers, of course, the X-T5 does have a lot of appeal, right? Because it is made for photographers. It's a great handling camera as well. A lot of guys are going to like that feel and that design. I would probably gravitate to an X-T5 if money was no object and I wanted a Fujifilm camera out of their lineup as a photographer. Although, again, I have a soft spot for the XS20.
Yeah?
I do have a soft spot for the XS20. I do.
Love that camera.
Yeah. Yep. I do. It's a great camera and handles really nicely. So those are the alternatives, right? I mean, XH2, XH2S, if you want their premium body, do you want to go more hybrid? Do you want to go more photo with the higher 40 megapixel sensor? Or same kind of thing with the X-T5, right? The XS20 is maybe more versatile. The X-T5 is more specific. Again, 40 megapixel sensor. That really seems to be the separation is, do you need the resolution? Do you want the slower scan? You're okay with the slower scan rate because you want the higher resolution, or do you want something more versatile for everything?
Yep. Makes sense.
All right. There we go. I thought this was a helpful segment because we get asked a lot about Fuji cameras actually in tech support and whatnot. So hopefully that answers a lot of thoughts that people have.
There's a lot of choices.
So what have you guys been up to?
We've been, we actually had a major water main break in Calgary, and it dropped our water supply for treated water by like 30%. So 40%, it's been rough. So it's prime gardening season right now, getting seedlings growing and stuff. So I've been basically recycling all the water that I can use. Like, I've been putting pasta water into the garden and, whatever sort of wastewater. Like, if I'm going to have a shower, I just fill up the cold water coming out of the shower until it gets warm, and then I go throw that in the garden. So, because otherwise, if you go outside and you like spray your hose right now, it's a $3,000 fine. So
really,
yeah. It's it should be fixed here hopefully this week, but it's been interesting.
It was exciting. My daughter came back from day home, and she or another child, I still don't have the full story, had dumped a bucket of sand on her head. And trying to extract sand from very long hair without using water is really a chore. I don't recommend it. So we kind of settled on like stretch the hair out sideways and then turn the water on quickly and like comb side to side.
You know what I would have recommended, actually? I would have recommended a Roman strategy. Olive oil. Olive oil and a comb will actually do that. What they used to do is they put olive oil on their skin and then they would scrape. And
well, where were you on Friday, Jaron?
You didn't ask for my help. I can't read your mind.
Okay.
Maybe if you watched more gladiator-based content, Jordan, you would have a better idea.
It's time for me to finally jump into HBO's Rome, right? Is this my window now?
Oh, Spartacus, it's got more nudity.
Okay.
What about, could you use vacuum or head? Just stick the vacuum on.
Oh, no. No, I like my kid. I'm not going to do that to
See,
her.
that's your problem.
Jeez. As you guys know, because you were in Portland recently, the weather here has been fantastic. My roses are going crazy. Very happy. I'm getting a shed installed this week, so I can finally put all my tools away. I'm very excited about my shed. I also played a lot of Destiny. I beat the final shape. I'm very pleased. I'm happy. I played some comp, and it felt good. Competitive PvP. Played some of that. And I also have this.
What's that?
It's back.
ZF.
What?
So, yeah, no. Did you think this was an X106?
No, at first I was like, oh wait, that's like an old. It's funny, the compression went all funny, so I was like,
no. This is
is that your camera back from repair?
Not yet. No. It is on its way back. So I will say that I'm going to talk a little bit about getting my dad's cameras repaired here in the next few weeks once everything's together. But I'll let you know how it went and who I used and why. Also,
why do you have a ZF?
But because I wanted to try it. I'd never shot it. The only time I'd ever seen it was when we were in Monterey together, and Jeff had one. Our contact at Nikon, and now I would like to try it for myself, and I'm going to give it a shot. Yeah,
it's a fun camera.
We never did a long-term review on that, so I think you should check in regularly on the pod, Jaron, and let us know your thoughts on it. I was thinking about it, and then this Z6 III just suddenly popped up, and it's like, sorry, ZF.
Maybe we'll do a video about a modern vintage shootout.
Oh, I like that idea.
I like that too. So maybe,
although of course they don't line up with each other in any sort of way, shape, or form. Sensor side, it would be. A horrible video, and I will hate making it.
This is a big camera, bigger than I thought it was going to be. It's heavy and large, so I was hoping that it would scratch the itch of the X106. It's a different experience entirely.
It's a different beast altogether.
So,
but it's great.
I will try and use it. I only have a 40 mil though, and I don't know if I like 40 mil. It's a little tight. Could wish it was a 35.
Yeah,
but
good take.
Shut your dirty mouth.
Solid
there you
go. All right, I'm going to jump on really quick. I do have a recommendation. Richard Linklater's got a new movie coming out, which I can't watch in Canada. I'm annoyed about it. Hitman is coming out, but in anticipation, I went back and watched his movie that I hadn't watched. Jaron, you're not a huge movie guy, but have you seen Dazed and Confused?
No.
Okay.
I should have seen Dazed and Confused.
It's a movie. Everybody loves this thing. Like it's just a hangout movie. In the
Matthew
70s.
McConaughey for his entire career.
Exactly. He's just been playing a similar character to that kid ever since. So Richard Linklater made a kind of a sequel to it called Everybody Wants One that I'd been told, you got to check it out. This thing is a delight, and it's completely unknown. No one seems to know anything about it, but it is fantastic. It's just like a hangout movie with a baseball team, college baseball team before college starts, like before.
Is it Everybody Wants Some or Everybody Wants One?
Some. It's on the Van Halen song, I believe.
Everybody Wants Some.
So from 2016?
Yeah, it's a recent movie.
That's not recent. That's 8 years ago.
Okay, in my mind, come on, I was talking about Citizen Kane 2 weeks ago. So in my mind, this is a very recent film, shot digitally. But if you love Dazed and Confused, check this thing out. It is just a great hang. It's solid vibes.
All right.
And you should look at watching it.
Okay. All right, let's move on to tech support, because there's a lot, and I don't know if we're going to get to them all today. So we're gonna try. The first one is a speak pipe from Brett Baker.
Hey guys, my name's Brett. I'm from Utah. I'm just wondering if you guys have any pointers for shooting indoor sports. My son plays basketball at a rec center, and I just like to be able to get at least some decent shots. If it helps for context, I'm using a Lumix G9 with a Sigma 56 mil F1.4. But any just general advice would be great too. Thanks.
Well, I mean, you have a fairly effective setup because, of course, those rec centers aren't always well lit. The nice thing about working at a rec center, it's not a game like an actual sporting game going on. So you actually have full reign to move wherever you want. So get close, try to get under the net, try to get those shots. The G9, I'm not a huge fan of the pre-release burst on it, but I do like the standard burst rate. So it's a fast shooting camera. So absolutely utilize that. Just overshoot and hope for the best. But I would maybe think about getting a different lens that gives you some different angles as well. Again, it's nice at the rec center you can move, so you can change your positioning quite easily. But maybe getting something a little bit wider and then closer to the net would also be effective.
My one that I want to jump out is I think 135 is the most banging indoor sports focal length. If you can find one, that 75 millimeter OM 1.8 is just a deadly sports lens, and that'll work great on the G9. The other thing is the G9 is actually a shockingly good autofocuser, but it is doing the DFD wobble on it. I know our friend back at DP Review, Dan Bercalia, went and shot basketball with that exact setup, the G9 and a few primes, and was convinced he got nothing because the frame is kind of like wibbly wobbling, and then got back and reviewed images, and the majority of them were sharp. So just don't trust what you're seeing in your viewfinder if you're using continuous autofocus, and if at all possible, just chimp between peak moments so you can make sure that everything is actually working properly.
Remember, you can rent. You don't need to buy the things that they're saying. Like if you want to try out that 135 equivalent focal length,
I think the 56 is pretty close.
56 is good. I agree with Chris on wide. I like wide underneath the net. Those look really cool.
Yeah. I'd close down a little bit the aperture and maybe give yourself a little bit more depth of field room as well. But the G9 is a fast shooting camera, so burst.
All right. Next one is an email from Philip. Hi, Chris, Jaron, and Jordan. Let me start by thanking you for the many years of industry coverage. The podcast has been a welcome addition. I also really enjoyed the episodes with guests that you've been able to book from time to time. With the well-deserved compliments out of the way, let me get to the question.
Oh, I thought he was going to be like, you guys suck.
My question pertains to the manufacturing variances of lenses. Nowadays, at least for major manufacturers, given a copy of a model of the lens that person A owns, will it perform just as well as the copy person B gets, or within a very small margin of error? It's a thing in other industries, CPUs, for example, getting binned into product categories depending on how well they've, quote, come out. These products have enough variance for the same model to have the possibility of performing better than another copy, something that I think I was more accentuated in the past than it is today. Is this something that is observable in lenses? And then he asks, what about defects? Should beginners be shooting a test chart for defects when they get a new lens or camera, lest they find out the defects when they're more experienced and out of warranty? If I buy a monitor or a laptop, checking for dead pixels is an easy thing that requires nearly no expertise. But what of a defective lens or sensor? Would it be plainly obvious that there's a problem? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a can of worms, Philip. So I would say this. No, it's not like CPUs where they're graded into different categories based on, their clock speeds that are sustainable or anything like that. I mean, optical lenses face very stringent requirements. There is some variance, but, once it reaches a certain threshold, then the quality control says, yes, that's good, and it goes through. And I would say, especially nowadays with modern construction and modern production facilities, the variances are fairly small. So generally speaking, if you get a sample and somebody else gets a sample, they should be quite close. There can be issues sometimes with decentering of lenses where whether it be just jostling around or damage, but it's pretty rare. So I would say for the most part, lenses are pretty consistent nowadays in production.
Yeah, just shoot like a flat, like you say, how can I test this, relative to like
that's
a dead pixel or something.
Yeah.
Just, something that's a fairly flat field that's very detailed. Just take a picture and see if, one corner is substantially sharper than the other if you focus in the center. It's an easy way to see if you have a decentered lens. What I really miss is Lens Rental's blog, when there were new lenses that came out, would actually say like, our sample variation for this lens is this wide. And it was incredibly useful. So if you're looking at older lenses or used ones, that information's still on there. Like I remember the original GM 70-200 Sony lens. They were like, we have copies that are fantastic and absolute trash, and they were both released.
I must have the one on the other end of that spectrum. Mine is absolute trash.
Yeah. There were a lot of them, apparently.
Yeah, it depends. I don't think there's as much. The only thing I would say about testing your own lenses is it's not that easy to do effectively. You'd be surprised how hard it is. I know this from obviously experience doing it all the time, is like getting a camera centered properly, balanced properly, and then effectively the same distance to all four corners, finding something that's quite flat field to shoot in the first place. That can be quite challenging, a lot harder than you might think. So, I don't know. I wish I could help you out with that more. We don't have the time to do it, but like, it's very easy to take a shot and look and be like, oh, this corner's off. This lens must suck, when really it might just be that you're not squared on properly. So I don't know.
Without taking a bunch of time on this, I will say, just shouting out Roger Sakala on Lens Rentals like crazy today. He actually posted a blog on how he tests his own personal lenses. And all he needs is a lawn in front of him, basically. Focus stacks manually, and then he has a little thing where you can show how to drop it in, analyze it, find out how that lens is performing. So it is quite technical, but there is a solution out there if you want to take the time to do it.
All right. Next one is a speak pipe from Anonymous.
Ooh, like the organization of...
No, just someone who didn't give us their name. Oh, maybe. I don't know.
That's
maybe.
Cool. All right.
Hello, this is a question for whichever one of you does the most video editing. What's your favorite activity to get your eyes away from the screen, still not get out of the groove? Thank you.
This is actually a tough one. I snack.
That's not good. That's not healthy.
It's terrible, and the effects are definitely showing. But I do find, like, if I take a break, it takes me a long time to get back into an editing headspace, and that might just be how my brain works. I know they say, like, go for a walk or do some exercise or something like that. I've always found then once I sit down, I'm back to distracted. I really need to lock into something. And this is just, my own experience is I need a long stretch of time where it's like, I am editing, I'm not leaving from this. And that's when I can really focus and be the most productive. But I know a lot of other people are different. I mean, both of you guys edit. What's your experience been?
My brain works differently.
I actually agree with you, Jordan. So I do a lot of video editing for the Flash Shop, and then of course photo editing for our channel. And so I actually find they're very different. When I'm photo editing, I like to take breaks and just switch off, do something else, kind of break it off if I'm not feeling. But photos are easy. I can come back to them at any stage and just keep doing it, right? Whereas with video editing, I agree. If I stop to take a break with video editing, I'm trying to keep in my head the flow of things, the direction of the story, where I want to move clips. And if I obviously, once I've got like a timeline sequence, I'll take a break, whatever, then do color grading separately. But if I'm in the middle of that stage, I don't take a break. I have to power through it. But I don't snack either, because like that's
Yeah, my brain works differently. When I was in college, I realized that this is not common. But like I only take notes for the fact that I like write them down, and then by writing it, my brain logs the information. Yeah. And then if I read, like I can be doing several other activities, and my brain is processing how to take what I've read and spit it out. So like I could be taking a shower, watering my plants, walking, exercising, and I'm thinking about the edit in the background. So then I sit down and I just execute the edit. And I'm not even actively thinking anymore because that's already been processed.
What if there's a water shortage and you can't water your lawn or take a shower, Jaron? What then?
I do snack too. I'll go upstairs and I'll grab a handful of chips and I'll talk to my wife and see how she's doing. And then I'll come back down here and finish editing. But yeah, I don't have a problem stopping. That doesn't get me out of the groove because I have, it's a problem. Maybe that's why I can't sleep quickly. It takes like an hour and a half for me to fall asleep every night because my brain is still processing information that I'm going to use later.
If I take a break, I don't want to be in the groove. Like for me, a break is to completely detach from that scenario and do something completely different before coming back to it. Yeah. So yikes. What you're basically saying is you take a break, but your brain doesn't. That sounds harrowing.
Yeah, very, very, very rarely. Yeah. I'm fine. Moving on, we got an email from Dexter. Hi, Jaron, Chris, and Jordan. This is Dexter. It is always great to listen to the PetaPixel podcast with you guys, the trio having fun arguing.
Yeah, we do have fun and argue.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jordan and I have agreed on a lot of stuff today, except the 50S2.
Here are some questions about lenses. Why do some lenses' glasses cannot resolve higher resolution sensors? How can I tell if a lens's glass can resolve higher resolution sensor or not if a manufacturer besides Fujifilm do not disclose or nobody reviews it? Does that mean Samsung has the best lens since it can resolve its 200 megapixel sensor on its phones? And then he wants to know, what's the Leica glow and what is the micro contrast that Leica users describe when they talk about Leica lenses? And then the third question is, why do some people say a lens can only provide the best image quality when it attaches to the camera that is manufactured by the same brand?
So that's an entire podcast for next week, potentially. There's a lot there. But
we can kick it. I'm happy to let him know that this Dexter will answer this email as a standalone topic.
I think we can try and quickly...
Let's pound through it.
Yeah, okay. Let's do it.
Let's pound through it. Okay, so Dexter, I mean, the first thing... we've talked about this before, but when it comes to making a lens, basically you have envelopes and you have a budget. It's like, if you push certain envelopes in one area of the lens, you have to either compromise in others or make the lens more expensive. So always the engineers are trying to work with what's our current lineup, what are the needs for this lens, where can we cut corners, where can we push harder? And, lenses nowadays are much higher resolving than they've ever been. But as sensor resolution goes up, the lenses have to do it. So in the case of the 18 to 55, it was made a long time ago as far as sensors go, especially in digital technology. There was no need to push the resolution higher than what the current crop of sensors would require. So they can do other things like give it a faster aperture and maybe correct for issues like distortion, loca, chromatic aberration, yada, yada, yada. So it just means now that as higher resolution sensors come out, the manufacturers have to redesign the lenses to push more for the resolution and maybe either take away from their areas or make the lenses more expensive, which is kind of what happened in the case of the new Fujifilm kit lens.
Yeah, you mentioned the Samsung 200 megapixel sensor. That lens is not going to resolve 200 megapixels, but you have to remember it's taking a whole bunch of photos every time you push the shutter. Stacking those together, the more information that they have on the sensor, the more it has to work with when it composites all those into a master file. And that's how they're able to get away with that.
What's interesting, though, as well to note, because it does bring up something, small lenses like we have in smartphones, small lenses on point and shoot digital cameras and stuff, even film cameras back in the day, often those smaller lenses were actually really good because having to record to a smaller media format was tough. It was challenging. So often those lenses were really actually very advanced, very sharp, very well corrected. But at the same time, they were still affordable because physically the glass is so small, right? Mm-hmm. The bigger your sensor, the larger the glass has to be, the more machinery you need to be able to surface that, polish it, bond it so that it actually all works properly. Given the larger dimensions, that actually exacerbates the issues. So oddly enough, those really tiny micro lenses that you see on a lot of smaller platforms are surprisingly good. They're actually very sharp and very well designed. And they get away with it because they're very compact.
Except for telephotos on iPhones.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Leica glow, dear God. So Leica glow is one of these things that a lot of Leica manufacturers or a lot of Leica forums talk about, and nobody can agree on what it is. I mean, there's some
let's throw 3D pop in there as well, Chris.
3D pop, micro contrast, all these kind of things. No, people honestly can't agree. So Leica glow was sort of a term with Leica lenses where some people say it's actually from poor coatings, like from back in the day, and you'd kind of get this dreamy look and effect. I mean, other people talk about, Leica has a unique look or a unique tonal range. That I would agree with, but it changes. It changes throughout the years. So we're talking about this sort of this sort of like historically interesting thing that people attribute to Leica glass and Leica cameras, and we're talking over decades. It doesn't apply anymore. So I will say this, modern digital Leicas, a lot of the look now comes from how they render their imagery digitally. And we actually saw some very interesting conclusions when we did our black and white episode where we look at all the ways the different manufacturers treat the tonality. And Leica's always had a very kind of beautiful stark tonality that works really well. As far as Leica glass goes, like a lot of the M lenses back in the day, they were fairly sharp, but more interestingly, they did have a nice way that they rendered tones, with the way they rendered colors. But this whole Leica glow thing, we're taking a whole bunch of different things that make up an image, bokeh, the swirly effect or corrected effect of bokeh, how it transitions from in focus to out of focus, contrast, overall tone. And we're taking all these things and just saying that's what makes Leica glow. And that's why nobody can agree on it. Forget it, get rid of it. You got to treat and evaluate each lens and each body separately for what kind of results you like in the look of. We just tested some Voigtlander lenses, and this is going to come out here shortly with our video that we did. And those are lenses that have character, and it's because the bokeh is imperfect. It's because the rendering is different. It's because the contrast is different than what you see in other situations. So it's subjective. It's really subjective. That's why we don't like to talk about it.
The last one is, why do some people say that the best image quality can only happen when you mate two lenses, a lens and a camera that were designed to go together? Again,
this is largely a Leica thing.
Is it? Can you take you can't adapt an M glass to a Sony camera, and you're not going to get the same that you would get if
I guess the thing to remember is that M series, when we talk about Leica M series, we're talking about true rangefinders, where the lens is very close to the sensor plane. Although this does now happen on a lot of mirrorless cameras too. The lenses are much closer than they were in SLRs. And so the idea is that when you've got lenses that close to the sensor plane, especially with wide angles, you get really acute light at the far edges of the sensor. And so Leica did for a time on a lot of their cameras, and still do to some degree, would calibrate their not the sensor. I mean, that was usually bought by a manufacturer, but the micro lens array in front of it to accommodate for that light hitting it in a different way, so as to get better sharpness and not have horrible vignetting and stuff like that. And Leica still does that to this day on the M series rangefinders where it's critical, not really on SLs and stuff, because then we're talking about full frame mirrorless like you would on anything else. But they do still to some degree correct for that, but they've also made allowances. M lenses work okay on other cameras. I wouldn't really worry about it too much. That's not to take away from Leica's dedication to making their M lenses work as well as they can on their M series bodies, but I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah, there was
as far as like using a Sigma on a different brand or cross-platforming Canons with Nikons and back and forth. Don't worry about it. They won't.
You can let Jordan talk.
No, Jordan can talk now.
I'll be zippy. So with the Leica lenses, because there was a bit of a curve to the film, those rangefinder bodies were so small. They were actually accommodating for that with the lens design, which is why those M series lenses on the M series bodies, they do have those micro lenses kind of like pointed a little bit more towards the center as you get towards the edge of the frame. So if you do throw it on something with a perfectly, sensor that's designed to accept light perfectly flat, it isn't going to perform quite as well as it does on an M. But a lot of that is just going to be vignetting, which you can clean up in post.
It's pretty, yeah.
The other thing is, as far as mixing and matching lenses, not really a problem back in the day, much more so now that lenses are designed to be corrected in software. So, it used to be like one of the great things about mirrorless is we can adapt all of these different lenses, but if those lens corrections don't come through, then you could wind up with some pretty subpar optics. So the only way to guarantee that you're getting all the corrections is to use that manufacturer's lenses on that manufacturer's body. But it depends on the focal length and type of lens as to whether
you can manually correct those things too.
You can do it in post, yeah.
Yeah, you can manually correct those things too.
All right. That's it for tech support. I had 3 more questions in here that I've had to punt to next week. I do want to point out, for anyone who has sent a SpeakPipe and is wondering if I'm ignoring you, probably not. I'm probably not ignoring you. I'm not doing so intentionally at any rate. I'm looking right now, and this is episode 50, by the way. This is the start of what I'm determining as season 3 of the PetaPixel Podcast. And I already have questions filled out through episode 55, and I'm still getting new ones basically every day. So we are weeks behind when you may have sent that question in. So if you ask us a question that is like super urgent, sorry. We're doing our best.
Hey guys, Merry Christmas. That's what all of our speak pipes are starting with now.
We might have to do another one of our episodes where we just answer questions. Yeah, we have done that in the past.
We'll see. We're going to move on to Never Read the Comments, the section where we make sure to read every comment. And I do want to point out, I have watched Chris read every comment, and he's sitting in the car and we're going somewhere. He's just reading every single one of them. So he sees them. I wanted to call out 2 from the Sigma 28-45 video. Neon Shores says, I just wish it was a 24-50 f2. Mm-hmm. Also, Jordan repping Criterion is always rad.
That's right. Subscribe if you haven't already. It's funny. Chris was talking to a woman at the airport the other day about classic movies and how she should check out Criterion Channel. So yeah, if you want to expand your film knowledge, Criterion. Also, I do think all lenses should start at 24 mils or wider.
Yeah. Attaboy Koi says, incredible gallery in all caps.
That's what I was saying, the other day too. I thought that was a really strong gallery. So good job, Chris.
On the 28-45.
Yeah.
Yes. Moving on to the GH7, Micro 4 Nerds said, going to use that clip of Jordan spinning in slow motion as my reaction whenever a new camera comes out.
I assume that's Emily. I hope that's Emily. It was nice to meet her, yes.
Similarly,
I see that online.
Evan Drew says, I broke into tears after Jordan's spin. It was beautiful. And then finally, Matt Chesky says, Jordan's breakdowns are absolutely insane and efficient. He's so good at this.
Yes, you are.
I write a script because otherwise I just stare at a camera and have no idea what the hell is going on. And we wind up with gibberish. So yes, pre-planning can sometimes be a benefit.
On last week's podcast, Bing Bong 4848 says that ad read was messier than the S9 launch, Jaren. Yeah, you know what? I agree. It was really bad. But you listen to it. That's the important part. Okay, Adam Nowak 9556 says KGF stands for kilograms of force, like Newton's.
We got a bunch of these.
That's great.
What's funny about this is later that day, after we recorded or published the podcast, Pentax released 2 new underwater point and shoots, and I was reading the press release and I saw KGF in there too. And I'm like, oh shoot, that must be a real thing. And yeah, kilograms of force. I knew it. Now I know it, and everyone told me.
How much force it can actually take,
Yeah, my brain now knows KGF, so thank you, everyone, for correcting me. And finally, Jeff Simbro, 7742, thank you for this podcast. I look forward to it every week. I have no friends that are interested in photography, so no one to talk to. So listening to you guys is like hanging out with my favorite photo friends. Thank you.
That's a lovely comment. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's why we do it. Good wrap up there at the end. I like it. Where after like getting bummed out by Adobe, we get to end on a high note. Thank you.
Yeah, these weren't the kind of never read the comments where I'm like in the back of the car angry and stewing and getting mad and Jaren's like, stop looking at it. Jordan's like, why are you looking at those? Yeah.
I may have selected some happy ones this week.
And then Jordan's like, don't write back. Write back.
Oh no, he's typing. Jaren, he's typing. Yeah. Stop him.
Like pull the car over.
Slap his hand.
That's truly been a conversation we've had quite a few times. Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to break down quite a bit because next week's very exciting. So,
we can say one thing. The Z6 III is going to be out next week, and that's what we're going to talk about.
A lot to talk about. So we'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.